Well, for more on that, let's talk to Bashir Abu-Manneh, a reader in postcolonial literature at the University of Kent, joining us from London. Thank you very much for joining us in this bulletin. So this plan, then, it would suggest an extremely high level of control and military operations inside Gaza, even after the war, along with some kind of Palestinian entity, unspecified, doing the civil administration. You're talking about this as an extension of the war rather than a post-war plan. Why do you say that?
Yes, it's war by other means, because what Israel is trying to do is to achieve its war aims, but now diplomatically after the end of the war. There's no sense in which, I mean, the best way to summarize it is to say that Israel is looking for another colonial fix like it has in the West Bank, where it has a local collaborationist regime that coordinates security with it, but Israel can go into the West Bank at will, catch militants, kill militants, and continue its occupation and settlement activity in the West Bank. It won't. This plan doesn't just propose re-engaging or reigniting settlement activities in Gaza, but Israel wants to continue doing the same kinds of things that it does in the West Bank. Continue to control security, continue to occupy, offers only endless war. This doesn't bring security and peace to no one in the region. This just continues the state of intensive occupation and war. The only disagreement that Israel has with the US, with the Americans, is over who ultimately is the civilian body that will help Israel administer Gaza. Israel doesn't want the PA because it wants to keep the Gaza Strip and the West Bank separated off politically, to keep them divided, to keep them politically fragmented. So the discussion is finding local collaborationist agents or figures. Sometimes the talk is about the North, sometimes the talk is about the South, but that's the formula that they're working with.
And briefly, I mean, there might be another point of division with the United States in terms of the introduction of the US as a leading member of a multinational force that is also supposed to include European and Arab nations. What do you make of that plan?
Yeah, again, that's not realistic. This is just a way to find more American cover, which is already extensive for the occupation, for the Israeli occupation of Palestinian lands. Now what Israel is proposing is for America to actively participate in the occupation, making the US a target of Palestinian militants and pulling the Americans into the region even more intensely. I don't see that happening. I also don't see that invitation to Arab regimes to actively participate in the administration of the Israeli occupation as happening. I think this is just floating balloons, just testing the ground. It's important also to remember that Israel hasn't yet achieved any of its war aims. Hamas hasn't been eradicated. Yes, Hamas is still fighting. After 90 days of intensive war by one of the world's most powerful armies, the hostages have not been returned. They haven't been traded with Israeli captors and Israeli prisoners, Palestinian prisoners in Israeli prisons. So none of the war aims have been achieved other than decimating Gaza and displacing the population and destroying most of it.
Bashir Abu-Manneh, I have to interject there. Thank you very much for joining us from London. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Now, at least one person has been killed and several people injured during an Israeli raid in the occupied West Bank. A man was shot in the city of Tubas during confrontations with Israeli forces. Raids have also taken place in Tulkarem, in the Nur Shams refugee camp. Dozens of people have been arrested in the incursion. Nida, Ibrahim has more from Ramallah in the occupied West Bank.
While the Israeli forces raid left, right and center here in the occupied West Bank, this time they've focused their main raids to two areas: the Nur Shams refugee camp, where they stayed for more than 40 hours, and in Sir village in Jenin to the north of the occupied West Bank, where they've stayed for around 9 hours. Now, there are Israeli media reports that the Israeli soldiers who have participated in those two raids have been suffering from injuries, one of them excessive, as a result of a bomb that has detonated there. All in all, you're talking about the occupied West Bank, which is largely unarmed, but you see some armed men taking a hold in Jenin and in the Nur Shams refugee camp. And this is why we've been seeing a lot of those Israeli raids concentrating on those areas. But Palestinians would tell you that Israelis, in their different raids to many Palestinian cities, villages and refugee camps, want to remind the Palestinians who has the ultimate force, who has the upper control, and they would want to stop any resistance to their occupation. Nida Ibrahim, Al Jazeera, the occupied West Bank.